reconvene this meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. The Board of County Commissioners is in full attendance, and we'll be moving along with our agenda at item 13. Reminder to those of you who are watching now or in the future that if you click on view material on today's agenda, which can be found on Lane County's website, you will see the entire presentation and documentation that is being presented by Brett Henry and Bob Kiefer today. So moving along, we have a discussion of Lane County Parks funding, the implementation work plan and calendar. And that is PM and NBA 12-18-218, 709-2019, 1108-2021. And today we have Brett Henry, Lane County's Parks Division Manager, and Bob Kiefer, Special Districts Association of Oregon, also legendary, long time executive at Lama Lane. So Brett and Bob, welcome. And Brett, I'll turn it directly to you to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Farr. Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, once again, my name is Brett Henry. I'm the Parks Division Manager with Lane County. And with us today, we have Bob Kiefer, who is with the Special Districts Association of Oregon. So we're just coming back to you, since we had the meeting last October where we presented the findings from the Parks Funding Task Force. And since then, Bob and I have worked along with my staff on putting together an implementation calendar and work plan. And this is ahead of placing a local option levy on the ballot in November. So we'll be providing another 4 updates to the board. That's what we have scheduled this time, kind of during a time span between now and the November election. And today I'm going to highlight some of the key tasks we're working on here. Can you see the screen that I have projected as the calendar?
Yes.
Great. So here at the end, there should be some time designated for questions, and we're both here as long as you need us, as long as time allows. So looking at the implementation calendar here, I'm going to highlight, some of the key points some of the key tasks that involve the board. And it's just, when you think about this, there's quite a bit ahead of us, more than what I had anticipated. So, we have a lot of work to do. So really, when we look at the board involvement, it's not going to start until April. So we have April 26th here, tentatively scheduled. And this will be a review of the second deferred maintenance report or facility condition assessment. So we're going to assess an additional 13 parks. And so there's going to be more deferred maintenance projects to add to what we already have through the first report. But what we're really trying to do is prioritize what we're going to put in the levy here over the next 5 years. And then we're going to follow up again with the board in June, a couple of meetings there. We're going through a pretty robust review process. We want to get the opinions of the Lane County voters. So we're going to do another public opinion survey. And this one's going to be more targeted towards what folks want to see out of our parks, what we need to include in the levy package. So we'll be reporting those findings to the board at that time. And then we plan on coming back again in July. We're going to talk about really at that point, we'll kind of have everything coalesced, and we will then ask the board to consider either a resolution or board order to submit the local option levy on the November ballot. And we want to get, obviously, your feedback before that goes official and we file the actual deadline is the filing deadline's on the 8th of September. So we have some time to go back and forth and schedule some additional meetings so we can refine that levy measure. And so September 8th is that deadline, and then the November 8th election. So that's more high level, looking at the calendar. Also, I have a work plan here, and I'm going to go into a little more detail, a little more granular detail about, what we have here moving forward. And, really when you look at it, it seems overwhelming with the number of things we have, but what we're trying to do is really prioritize what we need to get done in the next 5 years. And, looking at the deferred maintenance projects that we currently have now, we're going through that review right now here this month in February. And we put together sort of a scoring system, we're calling it a priority matrix, where we're figuring out each piece of infrastructure, how critical is it to the parks, what shape is it in, where is each piece in as far as its useful life, is there safety issues that we need to address right away, etc. Also, we need to take a look at how we're going to fund each project. There may be some existing funds like system development charges that we can use. There may be some county discretionary funds. And we do know that there are a number of projects within the parks that are actually in the roads jurisdiction. So we'll have to kind of tease those projects out because only roads funds can be utilized for those. So there's some more refining that we're doing right now as we move through this. And you'll see also that the you're looking at the levy rates through the fact that homes are obviously worth more now, and so the assessed values are higher, and so that will also lower the annual amount that we would include in the levy per assessed home. And so that's going to also kind of affect what the voters see. And as we go through this, we think it's going to lower the amount that we had discussed earlier. The levy was around 6 million, and lower it closer to maybe around 5.5 million. So we think that's going to become more and more refined as we get more information. And so, moving through the months here, we've already have the contract for the second facility assessment, and that's when we're looking at the additional parks to give us a more refined deferred maintenance estimate for the park system. And as we move into February, we're really going to start the information giving to the public. We can't actively market anything, but we want to make the public aware of our situation as far as our lack of resources, the condition of our parks, and get some more feedback from some stakeholders. So you can see there's some groups here. Obviously, Rivers to Ridges, we want to get some feedback from other groups, Traveling County, some of the municipalities, the cities, park districts, etc. So getting that feedback will again help us understand what the key stakeholders need from our park system. And one thing of note I want to say is we're going to be hiring a marketing and volunteer coordinator on Valentine's Day, actually on the 14th. And so this individual has a good amount of experience with doing a lot of marketing, and they'll be working with a consultant that we're going to be hiring here coming up as well. We have money in the budget for a marketing consultant to really get that information out about our park system. So that's kind of what's going to be going on here this month. And then as we move into March, that's really when we start putting together what we're calling a capital project prioritization report. So I know it's a mouthful, but really what that is in layman's terms, it's what's going to be in the levy. What are we really prioritizing over the next 5 years? And, you know, so we're getting a more refined list of what we're going to put in the levy, but we know that there has to be this constant engagement with the public as we continue that momentum going through the months as we get closer to the levy. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a second public information survey that's going to go out. And so that one is going to be more targeted around the levy, what folks want to see as far as projects in the levy as well. So that plus the stakeholder engagement plus the refinement of those capital projects that we mentioned earlier will get us even closer to, you know, what we're looking at. And so as we then move through the months, we get into April, we're getting more feedback from the Parks Advisory Committee and from the board. I think it's important to understand what's the additional deferred maintenance as we move through the second phase of the facility condition assessment report. And, you know, we're still doing the public awareness campaign and moving through that. So we get the results of the public opinion survey, we believe, in May, and then we'll come back to the PAC first, and then the PAC, the Park Advisory Committee first, and then the board, present those findings that we get from the survey. Also, you know, the refined capital projects list that I mentioned earlier as well, and then get that feedback before we go back to the commissioners in June. And so, you know, as we get into then July, it's more, you know, at this point, we need to provide a recommendation to the board of putting either a board order or a resolution out there for that local option levy. And once that goes out, we'll continue to work with the public, but we're almost in at that point kind of out of it in a way that, you know, we cannot, again, promote the ballot measure. So, you know, a lot of that will be done through another group called the Political Action Committee. And then as we move through the months of August and September, it's again, making sure, you know, if we're making some last minute changes to what's going to be in that levy, we're tweaking that before we actually have to officially file in September as we move forward. So yeah, it's just kind of like a lot of steps. And this is kind of what we have together at this point. I know that as we get more feedback and, you know, work through this, there'll be some steps we either take out or add in. But, you know, we want to keep that momentum going from now through Election Day. And what we cannot lose sight of is, you know, we need to really understand what the public wants to see at our parks. And it just gives us a great opportunity to engage. And so as we continue to get that information, along with the second facility condition assessment report, at that point, we'll have the bulk of the deferred maintenance projects within our entire park system. We'll refine those, put those together, go back to the board, and really talk about what's going to be in that levy. So, Bob and I just wanted to give you an update of what our plan of action is. moving forward and see if you guys have any suggestions for us as we move through this. This is going to be kind of a evolving thing as we get more and more feedback. And what we're seeing is it's likely that the original $6 million levy that we had proposed back in October, that was obviously the recommendation from the Parks Funding Task Force, that $6 million will probably come down closer to $5.5 million is what we're thinking. But yeah, so I'm here and Bob's here as well to answer any questions you may have about kind of what our process is. It's great having Bob here with us, with his experience, and he's worked through these funding measures before. So he's a great person to have as a consultant with this project. I'm really excited about the opportunity we have here. As I mentioned earlier, if we don't get the sustainable level of funding, I really question the future of what we're going to have with our parks. We're getting to that critical level, as we've seen through the facility condition assessment report. And the time is now to get that infusion of sustainable funding that we really need moving forward. So
thank you, Brett. Then sure. I will mention that the timeline that you have on the screen begins on page 65 of today's agenda packet. And it's all detailed right there. Thanks for the good presentation. I'm going to go to questions from the board. We had allocated, based on input last Tuesday, 20 minutes for this. I think it's pretty obvious we're going to go over a little bit. So Bob, before we go to the board, Bob Kiefer.
Well, thank you. I wasn't planning on talking, but I'll say to you that it's been a pleasure working with Brett and his staff, and we are beginning a process of trying to really hone down what projects we believe are best fitted for the local option levy and which projects could be funded through other measures. With that, we should be able to reduce some of the load on the local option levy. So that's an important piece of this. That's with the expectations that the other funding mechanisms that are inside the financial plan that we put together last October are obtainable. The retaining the car rental tax and the transit room tax, and also an additional funding from the general fund. So those were all things that were in that. So it's all built together. There's steps to this. And the last thing I would share is that there is a lot of work yet to do with trying to get out to stakeholders and find out what they want as well, and our partners in recreation in Lane County. So if you have thoughts about that, key people that we should talk to who have an interest in our county park system, please contact Brett or let me know, and we'll get them on the list and make sure that they're encouraged to participate in discussions with us to see what we can do to really serve their needs, as well as hopefully get our park system back into something that we're really proud of as far as our maintenance levels and getting the deferred maintenance taken care of. That's all I've got. If I'm here for questions along with Brett.
Perfect, Mr. Thank you for being here today. You have a wonderful product to work with. As you know, our parks in Lane County are beyond reproach in terms of their variety, their distribution. Just need maintenance and a little bit more activity in the parks. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to the Board of Commissioners for questions. And there is a pretty lengthy agenda packet that anyone who is following the meeting online can click on view items, get the entire packet. So I'll look to the electronic queue for questions for Mr. Kiefer and Mr. Henry. I see Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you, Chair. I don't necessarily have questions for Mr. Kiefer and Mr. Henry. I've had conversations with both. I greatly understand the deferred maintenance needs of the parks. My question for the board is do we need to have a longer conversation about our overall needs for revenue and funding? I'm really concerned about putting this levy forward ahead of the adult corrections and juvenile corrections levy and using up voter goodwill. There's only so much additional funding the voters are going to approve at the ballot box. We have a failing courthouse that we haven't funded. We have the jail levy that needs to be renewed. We barely touched phase 2 of rural patrol today with those new SRS funds, let alone into phase 3. We have stormwater needs that we've talked about, and we've got other facilities that we're having to renew and replace infrastructure on, as we're getting ready to redo our public service buildings central plant here. So I really understand the need specifically for parks, and parks is almost always something we get a yes at the ballot. But then people look at their bill, these little things we get in the mail, and they usually don't only look at that bottom right-hand corner. Mine's $4,000 a year plus, of which there's already $800 a year in bonds that I'm paying between the Fern Ridge School District and LCC. So I really have a concern that we are strategic about what we ask the voters to fund. And we have not had a conversation as a board. We are talking about our strategic plan right now, and that should guide our priority list. And we need to seriously think about what we're going to ask the voters for funding for, in what order, and what we think they can tolerate. I do believe it's great. We're going to get some more opinion survey. Unfortunately, though, the opinion survey only asks about funding parks. It doesn't say if you had to pay an extra, 40 cents for parks, would you be willing to renew the 55-cent jail levy next year? And frankly, that jail levy is critical, absolutely critical to our public safety system. I mean, I was here when we were releasing prisoners 11 a.m. every day because we couldn't hold them more than 48 hours without charging them. And we didn't have the DA resources to charge people, and we didn't have the jail beds to hold people. And, there's the famous story about the guy that got released from our jail, went to the closest bank he could find and attempted to rob it because he knew he shouldn't be on the street. And he knew if he robbed a bank, it was a federal charge, That system is so critical. I don't want to put that at risk. I think we have to have a longer discussion as a board about funding. And I'll put that out there. I greatly appreciate the work both Brett and Bob have done. And I greatly appreciate the need as an engineer about what happens when you keep putting off deferred maintenance. But we have road systems that are falling behind. We have all sorts of infrastructure in this county we're responsible for, and all sorts of systems that need funding. As I know that there's a critical need for funding staff for permanent supportive housing that we haven't yet even discussed as a board. So we need to have a longer conversation of what our funding needs are going to be in the next 5 to 10 years, and what our priorities are, and what we're going to ask the voters for.
And thank you, Commissioner Bozovich, for those words of caution. I think they echo pretty solidly in all of our ears. And there's no question as we move through the process that we put alongside all of the other needs and hopes for the county. Everybody's gone to Zumwalt Park and wishes it was still open, but it's not. And there are boat landings that aren't open. But in the meantime, we do have unmet public safety needs, and we do have a critical jail levy coming up. All of this will go into the discussion. Looking back to the queue, I see no hands raised, but I'm going to give it a moment. I'll bet one comes up. If not, Commissioner Burney will be followed by Vice Chair Trigger.
Just wanted to bail you out there, Chair. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
I know what it feels like. Well, obviously, we will need to prioritize. And obviously, that's one of the reasons why I enjoy so much getting involved in things that where it doesn't require requesting money of taxpayers. Having said that, though, this agenda item is about parks, and I absolutely am looking forward to it moving forward. I'm looking forward to hearing Brett and Bob, you know, what the final number and information is. I, as many, have grandkids that are, I mean, we fully use the parks, and the parks are part of the richness of this county. So with the understanding that this is in a context, I appreciate the presentation. I'm watching closely, and I'm looking forward to moving this forward. Thank you.
Right on. Thank you, Commissioner. And Vice Chair Trigger, your hand went up and down. Are you still in the queue?
Yes, please.
Vice Chair.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the presentation and the packet. I was able to skim through most of it and dig into a couple. The comments Commissioner Bozovich made sort of brought up one of my overarching questions, which was you're moving forward on the supposition of a November 22. How you arrived at that timeline? Because as I recall, last time we met, it was maybe November 22, maybe May 23, maybe November 23. So is this just sort of a working supposition to keep us moving forward, or has something come up in your work that would indicate this is the best timing?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer. Yeah, I mean, we looked at obviously May of 23 or November of this year, and we really, we strategically feel that we need to put it on the ballot now versus 23, because obviously you talked about the jail levy renewal, and as well as we need help. I mean, as soon as possible. It's just really alarming when we got the deferred maintenance reports back and saw just the condition that those key parks were in. And so, the quicker that we can get this sustainable level of funding, the better. We hope that we could get some assistance through the American Recovery Plan Act. We're in line, hopefully, but at this point, we did make the cut for the first round. So we're hoping that we can get some funding to help us out. And of course, that would lower the levy amount. But yeah, just timing wise, it works a lot better for us because, obviously we need the help now. And then strategically, it's pretty tough if we waited until the spring with the renewal, which is probably more likely to pass. I don't know, but it's, it works better for us to have it here in the November election, and we're ready. We have, as I mentioned, quite a bit of time to engage with the public and see what they really want us to focus on, with these projects and the deferred maintenance. So I think we're ready.
Great, thank you. I also noticed in the three alternatives, two of them generate the same amount, right? A fees and taxes one and a combination one. So I'm just wondering, I mean, the math is in front of me, but is there value in looking at a combined initiative that arrives at that higher number, the way the traditional funding strategy alternative A does? Why? Right, because they're not three alternatives to get us to the same number.
I'll let Bob answer that one.
I knew he was going to pass that one on to me. I think one of the concerns that came up with those other items we heard from individual board members and from the task force. Remember, there was a 15-member task force here that was involved in going through this entire process. And one of the things about those alternative sources, they may have been taxes on top of taxes that are already occurring, or fees on top of fees already occurring. For instance, taking money out of solid waste or increasing fees at solid waste to fund things, and felt like it was the purest way was the local option levy. Everybody understands that traditional source. And as we look at trying to get that number down, and as the assessed value of the county increases, we hope to bring that rate down so that, it's less than $3 a month for a typical homeowner in the Eugene 4J school district. So that's really why we stayed with that. It was traditional, it was simple, straight to the point, and we weren't taking one source from another source to make it that we haven't already been taking. I mean, the car rental tax and the transient room tax have been a traditional resource for the county park system. They're just not big enough to do everything that we need to do when we look at the amount of deferred maintenance and the needs that we have. We have almost a $3 million need just in local maintenance needs, just to have a staff to be able to take care of the system that we have. So those are all things that went into the mix, Commissioner. I hope that answered your question.
It does a little. It sort of leads me to my second to last question, which is, I mean, as you well know, right? People want to see real improvements if they make an investment like this and agree to take this on, and sort of simply staving off further deterioration isn't really visible or compelling.
Yeah.
So, is this amount, will people see a real impact for their investment?
So if you look at the list of projects, even on the deferred maintenance side, replacing an entire irrigation system, well, we may not do the whole irrigation system, but when you don't have green lawns and parking lots that are potholed and roads that are not working well, or potable water that's not coming, or restrooms that are inaccessible to the public, when you start making those improvements, and then when you talk about what can we do on the coast at the North Jetty property, or what can we do at Perkins Peninsula out toward Bonita, what can we do out at HBR to improve the trail system and the parking so that when they come in, they feel safe and they have an accessible place to enjoy the outdoors. I think there's lots of things like that that we'll need to highlight in the project list as we move along. Sorry, Brett, I probably took your thunder there.
No, I just wanted to add that, we have 46 public boat ramps, and I'd be willing to say that probably 30 out of those need some serious repair. I think you'll see that right away. We could work with the Oregon State Marine Board, who I have a good relationship with, in getting those boat ramps in working shape. So I think it'll be tangible. People can see the results very quickly through this strategy.
Great, thank you. And that leads to my final comment / question, which is, I fully appreciate Commissioner Bozovich's concerns. I also really like to put things in front of voters that they want and are going to support. And I think that helps give people a sort of habit and appetite for continuing to invest in public resources and public assets. And you've mentioned a couple of times a parks marketing plan and getting more elevating for folks the issues and the benefits of having safe and strong, well-maintained parks. And then you also mentioned, I think, Brett, you talked about if we move forward and we put something on the ballot, there'd be a PAC working to actually campaign for the passage. Are those two different things? And if there's, just if you could just speak a little bit to the goals and structure of those two things, and if we have the funding to do those pieces.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we're not allowed to actively campaign for a ballot measure, obviously, as park staff. So, but what we can provide is the information about what's going to be in the levy, what folks want to see as we move forward. We can talk about the condition of our parks and what they could be with more funding. And so, really going out to the stakeholders and targeting the message to the audience is what we're going to be doing moving forward. And so that's going to be what I'm calling, a marketing informational campaign. And obviously then the Political Action Committee on their own then can advocate separately from county staff for the particular measure.
Okay, great. So if I'm understanding you, the marketing is really just increasing and coordinating communications about our park system to the public, right, in service to supporting the work of the PAC to be successful at the ballot. Got it. Great, thank you.
If I could add one more thing to that, Commissioner, I think the other part of that is what we learned in the survey is that people that utilize our parks, support our parks, are more likely to support our parks. And so part of this marketing needs to be, what are those beautiful things we already have? Even though they may not be in the best of shape, what are the facilities you can go to? I think Harbor Vista, for instance, is a gem that not everyone knows about. What a great campground it is. It is. They're doing great work there. So there's a lot. Yeah, I remember having that conversation with you, Chair, but I think that there's a lot of that needs to occur too. We need to get our citizens in our park system, because that's when they'll feel like they're part of it. And so that'll be part of what I think the marketing plan should be doing for us as well.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you for the responses to that. Looking at the queue, I see no further hands raised. So a couple of things I'll mention. You know, our parks are in varied states of repair. You mentioned Perkins Peninsula. If you go out there, there are big chunks of exposed rebar that make it not just unsightly, but it's really unsafe. So there, as we look through the list of the things that our parks need or that we want, there has to be, as you know, a hierarchy of what has to happen to keep the park open and what is nice to happen. You know, irrigating lawns may be down the list, whereas removing chunks of rebar might be at the very top of the list, because one fall on that rebar, as you know, we're in trouble. The other thing I'm going to mention is that some of our parks are real jewels without any further work. And one that I use quite a bit is Highland Landing Park. Now, you all familiar with that? I'm sure Bob and Brett, you are, but it's not one that people go to very often. It's been closed a long time. I used to take my boat out there. I used to put in at Whiteley and take out at Highland, nice little stretch at the confluence of the Mackenzie and Willamette. Highland's closed. You can't get in there, but the hiking trails there are just spectacular. And really, it's the hikers who maintain the trails. Not that we should have to expect people to take care of the facilities that they use, but there is a certain amount of that goes into it. And I don't know that any place on our list will ever put money for Highland Landing. However, people who know it continue to use it and continue to have a really very highly enriching experience for their, in my case, for our grandchildren. So we love our parks, and there are so many of them. You mentioned the boat landings that are in disrepair. Whiteley itself, it's hard to put a boat in there these days, and that's right in Eugene. That's right on River Road, you know. So thanks for the presentation. Without further comments from the board, Mr. Henry, we will look to march down the timeline that you described today. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we conclude this item?
Not much, Chair. We just appreciate the support I get with the administration and the commissioners. I feel like we all want to make parks better. And I think, you know, as we talk about our options moving forward, you know, there are some adjustments that we can make. But I really think that we need to listen to the people and what they say themselves.
That is a good strategy. Thank you, Mr. Henry. And thanks again, Mr. Kiefer, for being here with us. And we'll move back to our agenda.
Thank you.
Which is close to its conclusion. I'm skimming down here, Mr. Mokrahisi. The next item is Commissioner's business. So any announcements from the Board of Commissioners? I'm looking for the electronic hand raise queue. I see nothing. Moving along, any future board assignment requests? I see nothing. So I'm going to mention something. I have signed a letter personally in support of the Mackenzie River Discovery Center. It was one that was prepared by Mandy Jones, who's been working with them. I did a little bit of editing, and the letter is signed. This board has approved the supporting the Mackenzie River Discovery Center. I'm going to send that letter via email to you all. And if next week, if we decide that we want to allow me to sign it as for the full board, I will do that. Otherwise, it'll go forward with my signature on it. So I'll send that via email. It could be less formal than that. I think since we've already, according to Mr. Kyle, we've already approved support of the legislative ask that's going to take place this year. If you just give me some form of thumbs up, I'll just sign it for all of us. So looks like we have it, then we don't need to bring it back. Consider it done. And then moving along to any future assignment requests. Mr. Mokrahisi, do you have any assignments for review?
I do not. The letter that you approved, you gave head nods for earlier, has been executed for the 2022 World Games. So that is completed. But
I've signed that already. It's great. Very good. Thank you. That's everything, Mr. Mokrahisi. Sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
That is it. Then
You've been extremely efficient today. You always are, but we had a good day getting things done. So
then we'll have a little bit of afternoon off. Be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning for a fair. No, I'm kidding. We will not. This is it for the week. At the sound of my gavel, we are adjourned, and we will be back in regular session on Tuesday at 9 a.m.